Everyone stopped breathing when he slammed the folder shut. My hands were still trembling. I could feel 40 pairs of eyes burning into me. I wasn't some intern making a mistake. I'd led this division for 8 years. But in that moment, it didn't matter. Because the man across the table wasn't just the chairman, he was my father-in-law. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're done here." And right then, I realized, this wasn't about business. What happened next? 33 people, my entire team, stood up and walked out with me. But trust me, you have no idea what really led to that moment. Before I tell you how I lost everything, and why I don't regret a second of it, drop a comment with the city you're watching from and the time right now. And if you believe loyalty still exists in this world, subscribe before the next twist catches you off guard. For a few seconds, no one said a word. The air inside that boardroom felt heavy enough to crush lungs. My name tag, Emma Cole, Director of Strategy, lay crooked on the glass table, right beside the pink termination folder he'd just slid toward me. My throat burned, but I forced my face to stay still. In rooms like this, showing emotion was like bleeding in shark water. I could see my reflection in the wall of tinted glass, shoulders squared, jaw tight, eyes refusing to blink. Inside, though, I was collapsing. Around the table, the people I'd mentored for years avoided eye contact. One coughed, another looked down at her phone. I could almost hear the guilt in their silence. And then, a chair scraped. Marcus from operations, always the quiet one, stood up. His voice shook, but his words didn't. "If she's out, I'm out." He grabbed his laptop, closed it with a snap, and walked toward the door. For a heartbeat, nobody followed. The air went still again, like the moment before thunder. Then another chair moved, and another. "This is wrong," Nina said. "You know it's wrong." Within 30 seconds, 33 people, every senior team member under my division, had packed their things and walked out. 33 against 1. But that one wasn't just anyone. He leaned back in his leather chair, unfazed, watching them leave like a man watching the rain, mildly inconvenient, but temporary. His voice was calm, deliberate, rehearsed. "You're all making a mistake. You'll regret this." The words were smooth, but the eyes behind them were steel. I met his gaze, and for the first time in years, didn't look away. "You already taught me how to regret," I said quietly, and I walked out too. Out in the hallway, the sound of elevator chimes echoed like applause that never came. The team followed me to the lobby, no one speaking, just the rhythm of footsteps and the shock of what we'd done hanging between us. My phone buzzed. One new message. It was from an unknown number. "He planned this. Don't go home yet." My stomach turned to ice. That was the first moment I realized. My firing wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. I'll tell you exactly how we got here. But first, if you haven't already, drop a comment with the city you're watching from and what time it is right now. Because what I'm about to tell you could happen anywhere. 3 weeks earlier, my life still looked perfect. On paper, anyway. My husband, Ryan Lawson, came from the kind of family people write magazine profiles about. Old money, new tech, and a reputation for philanthropy that photographed well under soft lighting. The Lawsons owned everything from shipping companies to a tech conglomerate called Lawson Dynamics, the same company where I worked, the same company his father ran, and technically, the same company I helped build. Ryan and I met at Stanford, long before the headlines and the private jets. Back then, he was charming, idealistic, the type who believed he could change the world. I believed him. I built my career the way most people build escape plans, quietly, methodically, in case love turned out not to be enough. At first, Richard Lawson, Ryan's father, seemed impressed. He used to call me the outsider with bite. He liked that I spoke my mind in meetings, that I didn't act starstruck around billionaires. That changed the moment I stopped agreeing with him. The first time I questioned one of his acquisitions, a merger that would cut 200 jobs overnight, he smiled at me in front of the board, then spent 10 minutes explaining how business really works. Everyone laughed, everyone but me. I learned fast that in the Lawson world, power wasn't spoken about. It was demonstrated. We lived in a penthouse overlooking the Atlanta skyline, glass walls and curated perfection. But at night, Ryan would stare at the city like he was counting every light that could disappear with one bad headline. "You know how he is," he'd say whenever I complained about his father's interference. "He's hard on everyone. Don't take it personally." But I did. Because somewhere between admiration and control, Richard had decided that I wasn't just an employee. I was a threat. The tension at home grew so thick, it started to echo through the office. Rumors spread about Emma's favoritism and Lawson family politics. I could feel the walls closing in, but I didn't know yet that the walls had been built deliberately. One Friday evening, we were all invited to dinner at the Lawson estate, his mansion on the edge of Buckhead. It was the kind of place that made even wealthy people feel small. The table could seat 20, though there were only 6 of us that night. Richard sat at the head, his wife across from him, Ryan beside me, and 2 board members I barely knew. Dinner started like a scene from a lifestyle magazine. Crystal glasses, imported wine, polite laughter. Then he turned to me, that signature grin frozen into something colder. "Emma," he said, "I hear you've been challenging our expansion plans again. How brave." The room went quiet. Even the forks stopped moving. I smiled back, the way you do when a storm's building and you can't afford to blink. "Just running the numbers, Richard. Some of them don't add up." "Oh, I'm sure they do," he said softly. "Maybe you're just looking at the wrong ones." He raised his glass. "To Emma, the woman who never knows when to stop asking questions." Everyone laughed again. And that was the night I realized I was already being tested. Later, as we were leaving, his assistant, a woman named Tessa, caught my arm near the door. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "Watch the numbers, Emma," she whispered, "and don't trust anyone who says they're protecting you." Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone. That warning didn't make sense then, but it would. Sooner than I wanted it to. Monday mornings at Lawson Dynamics looked like success carved in marble. Polished floors, espresso on tap, motivational quotes about innovation etched into glass. But when you spend enough time inside a palace, you start to hear the walls breathe. That morning, I noticed the smallest crack. The quarterly numbers had arrived early, too early. A report from our logistics subsidiary showed a sudden surge in consulting expenses. $4.8 million. No details, no signatures. I emailed finance for clarification. 30 minutes later, my access to the file was revoked. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I saw the new login alerts. Administrator override, R. Lawson. I sat back in my chair and stared at the skyline. The city looked the same, but something had shifted. By noon, word had spread that Richard was planning another acquisition, a media tech startup in Austin. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone but me. The startup's founder had once interned for Lawson Dynamics and quit after accusing the company of patent theft. We'd settled quietly. Now Richard wanted to bring them into the family. When I brought it up in the meeting, the room froze. "We've reviewed the risks," Richard said, not looking at me. "Not all of them," I replied. "The lawsuit from 2 years ago." "Handled." His voice sliced clean through mine. Laughter bubbled around the table again, polite and empty. He smiled. "Emma, you worry too much. You're married into this family now. Let us carry the weight." That line stayed with me all day. Married into this family now. I wasn't just an executive anymore. I was an ornament in a machine that didn't tolerate independent parts. When the meeting ended, I went back to my office. On my desk sat a white envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. The Austin deal isn't what it seems. Follow the invoices. Start with Orion Consulting. No signature. I checked the directory. No one in the company named Orion Consulting. I searched our vendor list. Nothing. For the next 3 nights, I barely slept. I traced shell companies through public databases, connecting dots that shouldn't have existed. Each one led back to a single offshore account, registered under an alias that used Richard's private email domain. I knew then that the company wasn't the only thing at stake. If I exposed it, I'd be bringing down my husband's family. If I stayed silent, I'd become part of the fraud. Either way, I was trapped. Late that Friday, Ryan came home to find me still awake, laptop open, spreadsheets glowing in the dark. "You're still working?" he asked. "It's past midnight." "Just something I can't let go," I said. He rubbed his eyes. "You're starting to sound paranoid. Dad says you're burning out." "Dad says," I repeated quietly. "Since when did you start quoting him?" Ryan hesitated. "He's worried about you, Em. About us." He kissed my forehead and walked away. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred. The golden life everyone envied was beginning to feel like a cage. The next morning, an internal memo went out announcing an emergency board session. I wasn't invited, but I knew. Whatever was coming had already begun. Saturday morning, 7:42 a.m. My inbox chimed. The sender was anonymous. OrionTraceAProtonMail.com. Subject line, "You're in danger." I hesitated before clicking. Inside, one sentence. "If they find out you've been accessing the offshore logs, they'll make sure you're the one blamed." A chill ran through me. How could anyone know what I'd been looking into? I hadn't told a soul. Not even Ryan. I replied, "Who is this?" 10 seconds later. "Someone who lost everything the same way you're about to." The message self-deleted before I could screenshot it. I rushed to my office at Lawson Tower. The lobby felt different that day. Security guards watching me a little too closely. Whispers I couldn't quite catch. When I swiped my badge, the scanner flashed. "Access restricted." "That's strange," said the receptionist. "It glitch, maybe?" But her eyes said otherwise. Upstairs, my assistant Chloe met me at the elevator, pale and shaking. "Emma, don't go to your office." "Why not?" "They're in there. Legal. And Richard." My stomach dropped. "They said you violated company protocol, unauthorized data access." I forced a smile. "That's a misunderstanding." Chloe's voice broke. "I heard them talking about an audit, one that points everything back to your credentials." My mind raced. They were setting me up. "Where's Ryan?" I asked. "He's in with them." I walked down the hall anyway. Each step echoed like a countdown. The door to my office was open. Richard sat behind my desk, legs crossed, smiling faintly. Ryan stood beside him, not meeting my eyes. "Emma," Richard said smoothly, "come in. We need to talk about a very serious breach of trust." I glanced at Ryan. He looked torn, like a man watching a slow-motion car crash. "You accessed files that weren't yours," Richard continued. "Sensitive financial data. We can't overlook that." "You mean the Orion Consulting transactions?" I asked, voice steady. His eyes flickered, just for a second. Enough. "Those are internal restructuring expenses," he said, tone sharpening. "Perfectly legal. Then why hide them offshore?" The smile vanished. "Emma," he said quietly, "I suggest you take a leave of absence, for your own health." "Health?" I laughed, hollow. "You mean silence." He leaned forward. "Be careful. Integrity can sound a lot like insubordination when you work for family." I left without another word. Outside, the city roared, horns, sirens, rain returning in a sudden downpour. My phone buzzed again. "Orion Trace, Meet me at the Iron Finch, 9 p.m. back booth. The Iron Finch, an old jazz bar on Peachtree Street. That night I sat in the booth, nerves raw, every shadow watching me back. A man in his 40s slid into the seat across from me. Sharp jawline, brown jacket, scar near his temple. "You're braver than I expected," he said. "Who are you?" "My name's Ethan Cross. I used to be Lawson Dynamics senior auditor before Richard made me disappear." "Disappear?" He nodded. "He buried me under a false embezzlement claim. I lost my career trying to expose the same offshore chain you're looking at." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything you need is here, but if you use it wrong, they'll destroy you." "Why help me?" "Because you're the first person who didn't flinch." I pocketed the drive. My hands trembled. As I stood to leave, Ethan said one last thing. "Be ready for the board meeting next week. That's when everything changes." The morning of the board meeting felt heavier than the sky itself. Atlanta's skyline glowed gold in the distance, but inside Lawson Tower, the air was thick with whispers. I could feel every eye follow me as I walked down the corridor toward the 42nd floor conference room, the room only the top tier of the company ever entered. My palms were sweating. The flash drive from Ethan burned like a secret in my pocket. As I stepped inside, the boardroom fell silent. A dozen executives, a few I'd mentored personally, sat stiffly at the long glass table. At the head sat Richard Lawson, calm, collected, and already smiling. Ryan sat to his right, avoiding my gaze. "Emma," Richard began smoothly, "thank you for joining us. We were just reviewing some troubling developments." "Developments?" I asked, forcing composure. "Yes. Specifically, the unauthorized access to classified company data and potential conflicts of interest you may have failed to disclose." Murmurs rippled across the table. "That's not true," I said. "I was investigating fraudulent transactions tied to Orion Consulting." He raised a hand. "Enough." The room went dead quiet. "Emma, I tried to protect you," he continued, tone fatherly but venomous underneath. "But your behavior leaves us no choice. The board will vote today on your immediate termination." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Termination?" I whispered. "For asking questions?" "For breaching trust," Richard said, voice sharp now. "For endangering the reputation of this company and this family." I looked around the room. Every familiar face turned away. Except one. Chloe, my assistant, was standing at the side of the room, pale and trembling, holding a folder. "Mr. Lawson," she said quietly, "before we proceed, the auditors asked me to deliver this file." Richard's brow twitched. "What file?" "The one labeled Orion Holdings." She placed it in front of him, hands shaking. He opened it and froze. A dozen pages of internal transfers, matching Ethan's data, printed and time-stamped. The room went still. I stepped forward. "You framed me," I said, voice trembling but growing stronger. "You moved millions offshore through shell accounts under the company's name. You blamed me to cover your trail." "That's absurd," he snapped. "These are fabrications." "Then explain why they match your signature on every approval line." Gasps spread like wildfire. Ryan stood abruptly. "Dad, what is this?" "Sit down," Richard hissed. "You don't understand." "No," Ryan said louder now. "I don't, because for months I've been watching you treat her like the enemy." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! This meeting is adjourned." But then the CFO spoke, soft, shaking. "Mr. Lawson, the board has the right to vote." Silence. One by one, the members raised their hands. Not for me, for him. The motion wasn't about firing me anymore. It was about opening an internal investigation into Richard himself. His face went white. "You think you can turn on me?" he barked. "This company is me." I held his gaze. "Not anymore." He stood, straightened his tie, and turned toward the door. "You'll regret this," he whispered. As he left, 33 of my colleagues, one by one, stood from their chairs and followed me out. No one spoke. No applause. No shouting. Just the quiet footsteps of people who'd finally had enough. Down in the lobby, I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The sun broke through the clouds outside, spilling light across the marble floors. For a moment, it felt like justice. Until my phone buzzed. Unknown. Number. "You think it's over? He's not done with you yet." I looked out at the street. Black sedan parked across the road, tinted windows. My reflection stared back in the glass doors. I realized this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. That night, my name was everywhere. Lawson Dynamics executive under investigation for fraud. Family feud inside billion-dollar empire. My photo, the worst one they could have found, flashed across every financial news channel. The headlines didn't name Richard, they named me. By morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, lawyers, old classmates, even distant relatives suddenly worried about me. But the message was clear. Richard had gone nuclear. My access to company accounts was frozen. My company email, deleted. My corporate credit card, canceled. And Ryan. He hadn't come home. I called him 15 times before he finally answered. "Ryan, where are you?" "At Dad's," he said quietly. "Emma, you need to stop this." "Stop what?" "You're making this worse. You've gone public. Do you even know what you've done to this family?" "Ryan, he framed me. You saw the evidence." "Evidence you stole," he shot back. "Do you realize how this looks?" Silence filled the line. "You don't believe me," I whispered. "I want to," he said, voice cracking. "But you've declared war on my father." The call ended with static, the kind that lingers like a bruise. For the next 48 hours, I barely slept. I met with Ethan again, this time in an empty parking structure near Centennial Park. He was pacing, eyes darting around. "You did exactly what he wanted," he said. "You forced him into the light, and now he's burning you in public. So what do I do?" "Disappear for a while. They'll spin this until you're untouchable." "I'm not running," I said. "Not when he's still moving money through shelf fronts." Ethan sighed. "You're braver than I was. But bravery has a body count in this game." I looked down at the flash drive again, the one he'd given me at the Iron Finch. "There's more on here, isn't there?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "A second chain. Offshore accounts tied to political donors. If that gets out, it's not just Richard who falls. It's everyone who's been protecting him." "So that's why he's going this far." "Exactly," Ethan said. "He's not trying to ruin you. He's trying to erase you." Later that night, I returned home. The lights were off, but someone had been there. My laptop was gone. The files I'd printed, shredded. A single note lay on the kitchen counter, written in black ink. "Stop digging, or we'll bury you next." My breath caught. I stumbled back, knocking over a chair. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. Through the peephole, a shadow. Male, tall, still. I didn't open it. The man waited, then slid something under the door, a brown envelope. Inside, a photograph. Me, sitting with Ethan at the Iron Finch. On the back, written in the same black ink. "Next time he won't make it out." My knees nearly gave out. Someone was following us, watching us. I grabbed my phone and called Ethan. No answer. Again, nothing. On the third try, a voice finally picked up, but it wasn't his. "Ms. Hale?" the voice said. "This is Detective Aria Monroe, Atlanta PD. I'm afraid we need to talk." My chest tightened. "What happened?" "There's been an incident downtown. A man named Ethan Cross was found near Peachtree. He didn't survive." I sank to the floor. "He was hit," the detective continued. "No witnesses, no camera footage, but we found this on him." What is it? A note with your name on it. I couldn't breathe. Ethan was dead. And somewhere in the shadows of this city, Richard Lawson had made his next move. The war wasn't corporate anymore. It was personal. I didn't sleep for 3 days after Ethan's death. Every shadow felt like it had eyes. Every sound, a threat waiting for confirmation. The detective's words replayed in my head. No witnesses, no footage. Accidents didn't happen that cleanly. Not in Richard Lawson's world. On the 4th morning, I found a voicemail Ethan had left before he died, time-stamped 2 hours before the crash. His voice was ragged, rushed. Emma, if you're hearing this, something's gone wrong. There's one more file. I hid it where he'd never look, inside the system he controls most. Follow the name Lydia. Then static. No more words. I searched every database, every folder I could access. Nothing. No Lydia. No trace of that name in Lawson Dynamics. Until I remembered something. A photograph from 2 years earlier. Richard's 60th birthday gala. The event was themed Legacy. On the display wall, he'd presented his first acquisition, Lydia Textiles, a company that mysteriously went bankrupt 6 months after being bought. The name was buried, forgotten. Until now. I dug through old financial archives and found it, a dormant subsidiary with a still active email server, password protected. But Ethan had taught me one thing about Richard. His ego was the key to everything. I typed the first password guess, Lawson King 2020, denied. Second guess, the legacy continues, access granted. Inside were hundreds of emails, all encrypted. But one stood out, sent 2 days before Ethan's death. From richard.lawsonalldynamics.com to lydiaexec.lydiatextiles.net. Subject Phase 2. The email contained only one line. Eliminate all internal leaks before next quarter. Ethan's death wasn't random. It was part of Phase 2. I printed everything and saved copies to a hidden drive. But I knew digital proof wouldn't be enough. Richard owned the media, the lawyers, the narrative. I needed something undeniable. Human testimony. That afternoon, I met Detective Monroe at a small cafe near Piedmont Park. She was sharp, mid-40s, ex-FBI. The kind of woman who'd seen too many lies and learned how to smell them before they spoke. "You're saying Lawson had Cross killed?" she asked quietly. "I'm saying he ordered it," I replied. "And I can prove it, if you help me get access to Lydia Textiles' corporate registry." She leaned back, studying me. "You understand what that means? If you're wrong, you'll go to prison. If you're right, you'll be hunted." I met her eyes. "I'm already being hunted." She nodded once. "Then we do this my way." That night, Detective Monroe called in a favor, a contact in the Georgia Business Records Division. Within hours, she found it. Lydia Textiles' listed owner wasn't Richard Lawson. It was a trust, the Orion Foundation. I felt my blood run cold. Orion. The same word from the anonymous note that started everything. "He used Ethan to clean his own books," Monroe said. "When Ethan got too close, Richard cut him loose. Literally." I whispered, "And I was supposed to be next." Monroe placed a small recorder on the table. "If we're doing this, you need to get him talking. Don't accuse him. Make him feel safe. Make him believe he still controls you." "You want me to bait him?" "Exactly. We'll be listening." I took a deep breath. "When?" "Tomorrow night. His charity gala. Every major investor in Atlanta will be there. He'll want to look untouchable. And that's when men like him make mistakes." The next evening, I stood in front of my mirror, steadying my reflection. The dress I wore, emerald silk, had been a gift from Richard last Christmas. I smiled bitterly. "Fitting," I whispered. "He gave me the costume for his downfall." Outside, the limousine waited. As I stepped inside, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message read, They know you're coming. Don't trust anyone in uniform. My heart pounded. I looked out the window as the city lights blurred past. For the first time since this began, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power. The kind that doesn't lose. It erases. The gala at the Lawson Foundation Center glittered like a dream carved from gold. The kind of night meant to prove that evil could wear a tuxedo and smile for photographs. I walked in through the grand glass doors, my emerald dress catching the chandelier light like fire. The crowd parted slightly, not out of respect, but curiosity. The woman who'd been humiliated, fired, erased, had dared to show up. Whispers followed like smoke. That's Emma Grant, right? Didn't her husband... I heard she sued the company. Ballsy. I kept my head high, every step a deliberate act of defiance. In my right hand, a silver clutch, holding nothing but lipstick and a thumb-sized voice recorder. In my left, a champagne flute I didn't intend to drink. Richard Lawson stood near the stage, surrounded by men in designer suits and women in diamond halos. The billionaire CEO, my father-in-law, the man who destroyed everything. He saw me before I was ready. His eyes, sharp, pale blue, flicked across the room and locked on mine. A pause, a smirk. Then he raised his glass slightly in mock greeting. Bold of you to come. His voice slid through the air like a knife hidden in velvet. You always said I should stand my ground, I said evenly. And look how that turned out. He gestured toward a group of men, investors, government contacts. Join us, won't you? Let's remind everyone how grateful we are for loyalty. I followed him to the table. Monroe's voice echoed faintly in my earpiece. Stay calm. Keep him talking. We're recording. The table sparkled with crystal and white roses, but beneath it, my hand trembled slightly. Richard leaned close, his cologne heavy, his voice low. You've been busy, he murmured. I could say the same. Ethan was a liability, he said suddenly, his tone clipped. He forgot who built his life, who built yours. My pulse skipped. What did you just say? He smiled coldly. Don't look so shocked, Emma. You think accidents like his happen without orchestration? You married into control. You never had it. I could feel Monroe's voice again, a whisper through the earpiece. We got it. Keep him talking. I took a slow breath. Why me then? Why destroy me? Because you were supposed to stay silent. Instead, you stood up. You embarrassed me. In my boardroom. His smile widened. Do you know what I admire most about people like you? You still believe the system cares. He lifted his glass and tapped it lightly. But in my world, Emma, the system is me. Cameras flashed nearby. The press was beginning to circle, sensing tension. Smile for the papers, Richard said smoothly, slipping an arm around my shoulders for the photo. Wouldn't want them thinking there's trouble in paradise. I turned toward him just as the photographer snapped the picture, my smile cold, eyes burning. In my clutch, the recorder blinked red, every word captured. I hope that photo ages well, I said softly. It will, he replied. You, however... He stopped mid-sentence as Monroe's voice broke through again. Emma, security detail moving. Someone tipped him off. Get out. My throat tightened. I stepped back, forcing a smile. Excuse me, Richard. Ladies' room. I turned, weaving through the crowd toward the hall, my heartbeat loud in my ears. 2 men in dark suits followed. I slipped into a stall, locking the door. The recorder, still running, I tucked beneath the toilet tank lid. I whispered into my phone, They're coming. Back up now. But the call cut out, static, then silence. Footsteps entered the restroom, slow, measured. Richard's voice echoed. You really think the cops scare me? My breath caught. He was alone, or pretending to be. You were always clever, he said. But clever people die tired. Loyal ones die rich. He reached the stall door. I pressed against the wall, ready to fight, to scream. Anything. Suddenly, a loud voice thundered through the intercom system. "Richard Lawson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice." Richard froze. The stall door burst open. Monroe's team swarmed in, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them!" Richard raised his hands, face stone cold. "You think this ends me?" Monroe appeared, badge flashing. "No, Richard. This exposes you." I stepped out slowly, shaking, watching as he was handcuffed. His eyes found mine one last time. "Enjoy your moment, Emma. But remember, empires don't die quietly." He was led away through flashing lights, cameras, and chaos. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Ethan's death. Not relief, not victory. Peace. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, this wasn't over. Because men like Richard Lawson always left backup plans, and someone else had sent that final warning text. Billionaire CEO Richard Lawson was arrested last night during a charity gala in downtown Atlanta. Sources say the whistleblower is none other than his daughter-in-law. Questions remain about the fate of Lawson Industries following this shocking development. It had been 3 days since the arrest, 3 days of reporters camped outside my apartment, 3 days of former friends ghosting my calls, 3 days of wondering if I'd finally won, or just painted a target on my back. Monroe's team had gone silent. Internal review, they said. Too many eyes. Ethan's name was back in the news, but twisted. He was complicit, one article claimed. He knew everything. Lies. Manufactured headlines designed to bleed me dry. That morning, I stared out the window at the Atlanta skyline, gray and slick from rain. A message popped up on my phone. Unknown number. He may be gone, but the board isn't done with you. I stared at the text, pulse spiking. Seconds later, another followed. Board meeting, 9 a.m. sharp. Attendance required. The address wasn't the Lawson Tower. It was Harper Finn Consulting, the same firm handling the company's damage control. I knew what that meant. A power shift. When I arrived, 20 or so familiar faces turned. Some looked relieved, others terrified. At the head of the table sat Caroline Vega, Richard's longtime COO, and, rumor said, his silent partner in everything. "Emma," she said with a polished smile, "you've caused quite the storm." "I didn't cause it," I replied. "I survived it." "Semantics," she said, flipping a folder open. "Richard's arrest has forced the board to realign leadership. Effective immediately, Lawson Industries will merge under Vega Holdings. I'll be assuming executive control." "You mean hostile takeover?" I said flatly. Her lips curled. "Call it what you want. The world loves a comeback story, and I'm the new face of redemption." A murmur rippled across the table. "You think people will forget who built this company?" I asked. "They already have," she said. "And you're going to help me finish the cleanup." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" Caroline leaned forward, eyes glinting. "The files, Emma. The drives you stole from Richard's office. We both know they weren't all turned in. I want them. Today." My heartbeat spiked. She was fishing. She didn't know Monroe's team still had the originals. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Then maybe I should remind you of the NDAs you signed, and the pending fraud allegations your name is still attached to." My chair scraped back. "You'd frame me for this?" "Frame?" she said sweetly. "No, just redirect the spotlight. Everyone loves a scapegoat." "You think you can silence me like Richard did?" I asked. "No," Caroline said softly. "I'll make you irrelevant." She stood, straightened her blazer, and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, our first act of restoration, a public apology from Emma Grant, accepting full responsibility for the company's instability. A few gasps broke the silence. I stared at them, my colleagues, my friends, waiting for someone to speak. No one did. Caroline smiled. You'll go on record at noon. Press conference is set. Decline, and your employment history will disappear before the cameras finish rolling. My jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. No, Emma, she said coldly. I'm preserving a legacy. She turned to the others. Meeting adjourned. As the room emptied, one man, Jacob, from accounting, brushed my arm and whispered, "Check your car before you drive." Then he was gone. I reached my car, rain dripping off the concrete ledge above. The keys shook slightly in my hand. Something caught my eye. A small black box under the rear bumper. GPS tracker, wired and blinking red. I froze. My phone buzzed. Another message. You were warned. Should have walked away after the board meeting. I looked around. The garage was empty. Too empty. My instincts screamed run. Tires squealed in the distance. Headlights flared. A black SUV barreled toward me. I dropped the keys, heart racing, and sprinted between the pillars as the engine roared closer. The vehicle screeched to a stop inches from where I'd been standing. The window rolled down. A woman's voice, calm, familiar. You're in over your head, Emma, but if you want to survive this, get in. I blinked, drenched in rain, staring through the glass. It was Janelle, Monroe's field agent, the same one who'd helped with Richard's arrest. You're being followed, she said. Caroline's not working alone. She's cleaning house. You're next. I hesitated, glancing back at my car, then at the SUV. Do I have a choice? Not if you want to see tomorrow, Janelle said. I climbed in. The SUV sped off, taillights vanishing into the storm. The SUV tore down I-75, lights from the city fading into the dark Georgia pines. I pressed my palms together to stop them shaking. Where are we going? Safe house, Janelle said. Monroe's there. You'll want to see what he found. He's been quiet for days. Because the files Ethan left behind weren't complete, she replied. Until now. The cabin was small, tucked behind a wall of trees near Lake Allatoona. Inside, Monroe stood over a table littered with hard drives and case files. Emma, he said, nodding. We found the missing piece. Ethan's backup drive? Yeah, hidden inside a hollow book in your old office. My breath caught. He knew they'd come after him. Monroe inserted the drive into his laptop. Lines of code flashed across the screen, then a folder appeared labeled Blue Harvest. What's that? I asked. A shell company, Monroe said. Owned by Vega Holdings. It's where Lawson Industries funneled offshore accounts, false research grants, bribes. But that's not the worst part. He opened a document titled Project Renewal. Dozens of names appeared. Employees, whistleblowers, even a few journalists. Beside each, payment transfers, termination dates, or the word neutralized. My stomach turned. They were eliminating anyone who questioned the company. Exactly, Monroe said, and Caroline Vega signed half of these approvals. I stepped closer. Scroll down. My eyes froze on a familiar name. Ethan Grant. Status. Compromised. No, I whispered. It gets worse, Monroe said, double-clicking a hidden audio file. Richard Lawson's voice filled the room. He's asking questions again. If he won't stop, the accident will look natural. Caroline can handle the logistics. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the table. He planned it. They both did. Monroe nodded grimly. We have everything we need, but going public will paint a bigger target on you. I wiped my eyes. He killed my husband. He destroyed everything. They already made me a target. I won't hide anymore. Janelle leaned against the wall, watching the upload bar crawl upward. We're sending it to the FBI, Financial Crimes Division, and 3 major outlets. Good, I said. Let the truth breathe for once. Monroe frowned. There's still one gap, Blue Harvest's final transfer, It's blank. No recipient, no trace. So there's someone else, I said, above Caroline. Or beside her, Janelle added. Maybe someone inside law enforcement. The lights flickered. Monroe looked up. Power cut. Backup generator should kick in, Janelle said, but it didn't. A beam of light swept through the trees outside. Then another. They found us, Monroe hissed. He slammed the laptop shut and grabbed a USB stick from the port. Emma, take this and go through the back. Get to the dock. What about you? I'll stall them. The front door splintered open. Dark figures poured in. Tactical gear, no insignias. FBI, down on the ground, one barked. Monroe froze. Those aren't Bureau. Janelle fired a warning shot. Go, Emma! I bolted out the back door, branches whipping my arms. The lake shimmered ahead, pale under moonlight. Shouts echoed behind me, boots thundering closer. I reached the dock and saw an old motorboat tied to the post. Jumped in, yanked the cord. The engine sputtered to life. Stop her! Someone yelled. Bullets cracked through the night, splintering wood. I ducked low and steered into the fog, clutching the USB against my chest. On the far shore, I stumbled into the woods, soaked and gasping. My phone was gone, ripped from my pocket. I looked down at the drive in my hand, a single label written in Ethan's handwriting. If you're reading this, trust no one from the board. I sank to my knees, trembling, not from cold, but realization. There was one name missing from the list. The one person who stood to inherit everything if both Richard and Caroline fell. Ethan's sister, Madison Lawson. In breaking news this morning, following the arrest of Richard Lawson and the resignation of interim CEO Caroline Vega, Lawson Industries has announced a complete rebranding under new leadership. The company will now operate as Larkspur Global, led by Madison Lawson, Richard's daughter and sole remaining heir. I sat in a small diner just off the interstate, coffee cooling untouched. The news anchor's words replayed in my mind like an echo chamber. Madison Lawson, CEO. The sister-in-law who had always stayed quiet, always just out of sight. When Ethan died, she didn't call. Didn't come to the funeral. Her one text had read, "He made his choices, now live with yours." And now, she was sitting on a billion-dollar throne. You're pale, the waitress said, refilling my cup. You okay, honey? Just trying to wake up, I murmured, forcing a smile. My phone buzzed, a blocked number again. I hesitated, then answered. Emma Grant? Who's asking? Name's Nolan Pierce, investigative reporter, The Ledger. I think we're chasing the same story. You've got 30 seconds. Blue Harvest, he said. Project Renewal. I've seen fragments. Your name's all over them. You're not the villain they painted. You're the survivor. Meet me in 30 minutes. Midtown Library, back parking lot. I hung up without answering, tossed some cash on the table, and left. Nolan Pierce was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, rumpled suit, a pen tucked behind his ear. You came, he said, surprised. You said the right words. You have proof, don't you? He asked. I studied him. And what happens if I do? Then we burn the empire together. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket. Ethan hid this. It has files linking Madison and Caroline to a private account offshore. Funds that disappeared the same week Ethan died. Nolan nodded. She's been moving money through shell charities under the new brand. Madison's smart. She's framing herself as the ethical reformer. Public sympathy is already building. So she's laundering her father's crimes under a redemption campaign, I said. Exactly. He opened his laptop on the hood of his car, connecting the drive. As he clicked through folders, my eyes caught a new subfolder that hadn't appeared before. Archive, E. Grant. Wait, I said. Open that. Inside were emails, dozens of them. From Ethan. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Madison's pulling strings behind Dad's back. Caroline's covering it up. I'm scared for Emma. She's the only one asking the wrong questions. My throat tightened. Nolan looked up. He knew. He always knew, I whispered. Then his screen flickered. A red prompt appeared. Remote access detected. Someone's in the system, Nolan said, typing fast. They're wiping it. Disconnect it. Too late. The folders began vanishing, one by one. Backup? I asked. He nodded grimly. Local cache. But we need to move. They'll trace the IP. As we turned to leave, Nolan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yeah? A pause. Then his face went pale. They found Monroe's safe house. It's gone. Gone? I repeated. Fire. Total loss. No survivors. The words hit me like a physical blow. Janelle? He didn't answer. We're next, I said quietly. Then we go public now, Nolan replied. I've got a live stream channel with 500,000 subs. You tell your story. Tonight. I hesitated, heart pounding. If I go on camera, Madison will destroy what's left of my life. She already tried. I looked out at the skyline, Atlanta glowing against the dusk. Then let's finish this, I said. Nolan adjusted the mic. We're live in 3, 2, 1. This is Emma Grant, I said into the lens. And if you're watching this, know that everything you've been told about the Lawson Empire is a lie. The live chat exploded on screen. Thousands watching. My husband's death wasn't an accident. The CEO who replaced him, Madison Lawson, was behind a network of fraud and cover-ups that spanned over a decade, and I have the files to prove it. My phone lit up with messages, threats, warnings, disbelief. Then one name appeared, Madison Lawson. The message was just one sentence. You think this ends with exposure? Sweetheart, this ends with legacy. Within minutes of going live, Nolan's stream hit 1 million views. Comments flooded in like a tidal wave. Is this real? Lawson Industries is trending. Expose them all. My hands trembled on the desk as Nolan monitored the chat feed. We've got confirmation, he said. Major outlets are picking it up. The story's breaking. Then Madison knows where to find us, I said quietly. Reporters swarmed outside the small office building we'd borrowed for the stream. They shouted questions through the glass. Emma, were you really married to Ethan Lawson? Do you have physical proof? Are you afraid for your life? The last question hung heavy in the air. We need to move again, Nolan said. They'll spin this fast. He was right. Within the hour, Forbes ran a headline. Disgraced former employee launches defamatory campaign against Lawson family. Madison's face filled every screen, calm, elegant, unbothered, as she delivered a perfectly crafted statement to the press. My heart breaks for Emma Grant, she said, voice dripping with practiced sincerity. Grief can cloud judgment, but I assure you, Lawson Global operates with full transparency. We will cooperate with authorities and pursue legal action against these malicious claims. I stood frozen, staring at the blank screen. She flipped it, just like that. That's what PR money does, Nolan said. She's controlling the narrative, but we still have Ethan's recordings. And they'll call them deep fakes, I replied. You know how this works. Then we go analog, he said. There's something Madison can't delete. Her father's signature. Ethan's will. I frowned. But the estate already passed through probate. Not if there's a sealed addendum, Nolan countered. Monroe's partner might have had access. Monroe's partner? Detective Rivas. She went dark after the fire, but I know someone who can find her. We met Rivas 2 nights later in a dimly lit parking garage beneath a shuttered courthouse. She looked exhausted, eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. You shouldn't have come, she said. You have the will, don't you? Nolan pressed. Rivas hesitated, then slid a small envelope across the hood of her car. Ethan sent this to me 3 days before he died. I didn't know what it was until now. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, notarized, and sealed with Lawson Industries' corporate crest. Ethan's voice seemed to echo from the page. In the event of my death, should foul play be suspected or proven, my shares and assets shall transfer to my wife, Emma Grant, in full. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. He named me. That clause was buried, Rivas said. Richard and Madison falsified the copy used in probate. The original never made it to court. We can use this, Nolan said. It's leverage. It's a death sentence, Rivas countered. They'll kill for that paper. Too late, Nolan whispered. From the shadows, two men in dark suits emerged. No badges, no words, just silent intent. Rivas shoved the envelope into my hands. Run! Gunfire erupted, the sound deafening, ricocheting off concrete. Nolan grabbed my arm, dragging me behind a pillar. Go! Go! We sprinted for the stairwell, footsteps pounding behind us. The envelope felt like fire in my grip. At street level, Nolan shoved me into a cab. Take it. Get to the Channel 9 building. Hand it to reporter Cassandra Lee. She's clean. She'll know what to do. What about you? I shouted. I'll stall them. The cab peeled away. I looked back through the rear window, saw Nolan turn, hands raised, surrounded by black SUVs. At Channel 9, Cassandra Lee met me at the side entrance, hair tied up, eyes sharp. You're the whistleblower? Just someone who's tired of being erased. I handed her the document. Broadcast this, tonight. She scanned it quickly, eyes widening. This will change everything. That's the point. Cassandra's voice filled the nation that night. Breaking now. Newly uncovered evidence suggests that Emma Grant, widow of the late Ethan Lawson, is the rightful heir to Lawson Global. A notarized document contradicts the company's official records, raising serious questions about the legitimacy of Madison Lawson's leadership. Phones buzzed, headlines flipped, and the empire began to shake. Madison appeared live the next morning, her poise cracked for the first time. Those documents are forged, she hissed at reporters. My father will verify. But Richard Lawson had already been indicted. His silence was deafening. I turned to Nolan, bruised, exhausted, but alive. We did it. He smiled weakly. Not yet. They'll strike back. Then let them, I said, voice steady, because this time I'm not running. The war for legacy had begun, and I was finally ready to fight it. Breaking overnight, Lawson Global's stock plunges 42% after whistleblower documents surface. Federal investigation into Richard Lawson and Madison Lawson widens. Employees rally behind former VP Emma Grant. For the first time in years, the Lawsons weren't untouchable. Their empire, the one that had humiliated me, fired me, and stripped me of my name, was starting to fracture. Nolan looked at me across the table. Channel 9 wants an interview. National syndication. You could take back your story. And paint a target on my back again? Emma, you already are the target, he said flatly. At least this way, you control the narrative. I sipped my coffee, my reflection warped in the dark surface. Fine, let's make it count. Cassandra Lee leaned forward in her chair. Emma, when your father-in-law fired you during that board meeting, did you ever imagine it would lead here? No, I said. But sometimes the fire you're thrown into becomes the only forge that makes you strong enough to fight back. And what would you say to Richard Lawson now? I met the camera lens directly. You taught me everything about power, how it corrupts, how it isolates, and how it hides behind money. But you forgot one thing. It doesn't last. She's fearless. Emma Grant for CEO. Justice for the 33 who walked out. But with every view came backlash. Death threats, smear pieces, doctored photos. Madison's machine moved fast. Inside, Madison slammed her palm against the table. I want her silenced. I don't care what it costs. The remaining board members exchanged wary glances. "We can't keep burying this," said Victor Hahn, head of compliance. "The shareholders are calling for a vote." "Then stall them." "We can't," he replied. "Federal agents are on site. They've frozen your accounts." Madison's eyes flicked toward the window, at the city below, once hers. "No," she whispered. "This isn't how it ends." "You might want to see this," Nolan said, turning his laptop. On screen, live footage of federal agents escorting Madison Lawson and Richard Lawson out of the Lawson Global Tower. The crowd chanted, "Justice for the 33! Justice for Emma!" My chest tightened. The very building that had witnessed my public humiliation was now the stage for their downfall. "It's over," Nolan said softly. "No," I whispered. "Not yet. There's something you don't know." "What?" I pulled a small USB drive from my bag, one Ethan had given me before his death, labeled Project Atlas. "This isn't just about power or revenge," I said. "Ethan was working on something before he died, something Madison didn't want exposed." "What kind of project?" "One that could destroy every corrupt corporation tied to Lawson Global." Nolan's expression hardened. "Then we're not done, are we?" "No," I said, plugging in the drive. "We're just getting started." Ethan's voice echoes, "If anything happens to me, Emma, don't trust anyone in the boardroom, especially Madison. She's not protecting the company, she's selling it." "Selling?" Nolan asked. "To a private defense firm," I said. "Under shell companies. Ethan found proof. That's what got him killed." The USB loaded. Folder after folder filled the screen. Internal memos, offshore accounts, secret transactions. Enough evidence to spark an international scandal. Nolan stared at the data. "If we release this, it won't just take down Lawson Global. It'll expose half the political donors in the state." "Then we do it carefully," I said. "Strategically." The storm we'd started was about to spread far beyond us. "They wanted to erase me," I said quietly. "Instead, I'll erase everything they built." The room was dim, just the blue glow of monitors washing over our faces. The Project Atlas drive had finished decrypting. Folder after folder filled the screen, each stamped with names I recognized: senators, tech moguls, even military contractors. "This isn't just corporate," Nolan murmured. "It's systemic." I leaned closer, scrolling through files. Defense budgets, offshore transfers. And look at these contracts. They were funneling research money into surveillance software. Ethan was developing this? No. He was undoing it. He created Atlas as an accountability tool, something that could trace illicit money back to its source. Madison recoded it into a weapon. Nolan whistled under his breath. "So she turned a watchdog into a spy." I nodded. "Exactly. And if we release this, every name here burns." "Including yours," he said quietly. I hesitated. "Yeah, mine too." "Ethan's death wasn't random," I whispered. "He found out Madison was using Atlas to blackmail entire corporations. He tried to stop her." "And she stopped him instead," Nolan said grimly. We sat in silence. The weight of what we were holding pressed heavy between us. Truth powerful enough to rewrite history or destroy it. "Yeah, we're in possession of sensitive documents," he said. "But not releasing yet. We need immunity agreements first." "Immunity?" I echoed. "Emma, if we drop this raw, we'll get buried. Legally or worse. We go through secure channels." I shook my head. "There are no secure channels left, Nolan. Everyone's connected." "Then what? You just upload it?" "Maybe." He exhaled sharply. "You're playing with fire." "Fire's the only language they understand." I thought of Ethan, of the quiet mornings we spent before everything went dark. His laugh, his warning. "Don't let them win, Em." The message still lived in my voicemail, untouched, like a ghost reminding me of my mission. I recorded a statement. My voice didn't shake. My name is Emma Grant. You've heard parts of my story, the betrayal, the boardroom, the lies. But what you haven't heard is what Lawson Global has done behind closed doors. I have proof, and if you're watching this, it's already been released. I looked straight into the lens. No more secrets, no more power games. The truth belongs to everyone. Emma, what did you do? I sent it. To who? Everyone. Atlas files leak, hundreds implicated in corporate espionage and fraud scandal. Federal agencies raided, high-ranking officials resign. Anonymous whistleblower triggers nationwide investigation. The country was unraveling, and for once, not in silence. The Department of Justice confirms multiple indictments following the Atlas data breach, now being referred to as the Lawson leak. You did it, Nolan said. We did it, I corrected. But it's not over yet. What do you mean? Madison. She's in custody. No, I said, staring at the screen. She's too quiet. That woman never stops talking unless she's planning something. Inside, Madison smirks at the female marshal beside her. You have no idea who you're working for, do you? The marshal frowns, just as the van swerves off the highway. Tires screech, engine cuts, doors open, black SUVs again. Madison steps out, unshackled. You didn't think I'd go down that easily, did you? She says, voice low. A text from an unknown number. Round 2 begins now. She's out, Nolan said, reading my face. Then we finish this, I replied. You can't bury truth forever. It always digs itself out. One name, one secret, one survivor at a time. The storm had arrived. It wasn't just outside. It was everywhere. Headlines, lawsuits, protests, power outages, all echoing from the aftershock of the Atlas leak. Nolan paced the apartment, restless. She's vanished. No official record of a transfer, no custody log. It's like Madison Lawson just evaporated. I stood at the window, watching lightning dance across the skyline. She's still here, I said quietly. Madison doesn't run. She replaces. She's already rebuilding. From what? Every account's frozen. Money isn't her weapon, I said. Reputation is. Anonymous sources claim the Atlas leak was manipulated to frame innocent executives. Questions arise over the credibility of whistleblower Emma Grant. I turned off the TV. See? She's already rewriting the story. So what do we do? Nolan asked. We finish it. The way it started. Face to face. Hours later, we tracked a signal Nolan had intercepted. A private server ping from a familiar address. The old Lawson estate on Lake Monroe. That's her, Nolan said. She's broadcasting from there. Broadcasting what? He turned the laptop toward me. On screen, Madison Lawson, live stream, smiling calmly. Good evening, she purred. You've heard one side of the story, Emma's side. But what if the truth isn't so clean? What if the woman you call a hero isn't as innocent as she seems? She's going public, I whispered. She's about to flip it again. Then we stop her, Nolan said, grabbing his coat. The road to the Lawson estate felt like a descent into memory. The gates rusted but still standing, the same ones I'd driven through years ago for Ethan's funeral. Inside, the mansion stood dimly lit. The echo of our footsteps on marble floors was the only sound until a voice drifted from the shadows. I wondered when you'd come. Madison stepped forward, dressed in black, her expression eerily serene. You're trending again, she said. Must feel nice, being the victim and the villain all at once. You murdered your husband, I said. Correction, she smiled. I corrected his mistake. He trusted you. He underestimated me, she replied. Like everyone else. You leaked Atlas, she said, circling me slowly. Do you even know what you unleashed? Half the companies in this country will collapse. Thousands of jobs, gone. That blood's on your hands, Emma. No, I said. That blood's on yours. You built the system that let them thrive. I was the system, she hissed, and you destroyed it out of spite. No, I said again, voice calm. I destroyed it to keep Ethan's promise. Ethan was weak, she shouted. He wanted transparency, accountability, ethics. You think the world runs on those things? It runs on control. That's why you killed him, I said. Her silence was answer enough. Police are en route, he shouted. Backup's 10 minutes out. Madison smirked. Too late. She pressed a button on the desk. Alarms blared, lights cut to red. She's triggering a data wipe, Nolan yelled. She's burning everything. Stop her. Madison grabs a gun from a drawer, pointing it directly at Emma. You really think you can end me? She snarled. I don't need to, Emma said, voice steady. You already did. Put it down, Madison, Nolan shouted. You ruined everything, she screamed, but her hands trembled. For a moment, everything froze. Madison staggered backward, shock on her face, the gun clattering to the floor. She looked down at the spreading red on her shirt. Ethan always loved you more, she whispered, collapsing. Emma knelt slowly beside her, watching the life fade from her enemy's eyes. No triumph, no revenge, just relief and sorrow. It's over, Nolan said, placing a hand on her shoulder. No, Emma murmured. It's over for her, not for us. She looked back at the smoldering servers, the blinking remnants of Atlas. We still have to rebuild what they broke. The storm finally eased as dawn broke. They called it the Lawson Fall. The day greed collapsed under the weight of truth. Madison was gone. Richard convicted. Ethan's legacy restored. But mine was still being written. The world didn't stop when Madison Lawson died. It just got quieter. The morning after the confrontation, news feeds burned with one word: justice. Atlas Corp CEO Madison Lawson dead following internal whistleblower confrontation. Emma Grant, the woman who brought down America's most powerful dynasty. My name was everywhere. You're trending again, Nolan said from across the room. Emma, the rebel. Half the country wants to make you a hero. The other half wants you in prison. Sounds about right, I said softly. Truth always makes enemies. We owe this whistleblower our gratitude, said the senator. But we also owe the American people reform. Reform. The word felt too small for what we'd done, too small for what we'd lost. I walked the empty halls of Atlas one last time that week. The building was being prepped for sale, stripped of its identity. Logos removed, plaques boxed up. In the boardroom, the same one where I'd been fired, sunlight spilled across the long glass table. You don't belong here, Emma. I placed my ID badge on the table. I did, I whispered. More than you ever knew. They're ready for you, he said. Who? The press. They want your statement. 100 questions hurled through the chaos. Emma, how did you survive? Was Madison working alone? Did your husband know? I raised a hand. I'm not here to talk about Madison Lawson, I said clearly. I'm here to talk about the people she hurt and the system that let her do it. This wasn't one woman's crime. It was an entire culture's blindness. That ends today. That speech aired on every network within an hour. By nightfall, I'd become the reluctant face of corporate reform. But behind the interviews and documentaries and invitations, there was a silence that never really left. You ever wonder, Nolan asked quietly, if it was worth it? Every day, I said. You lost everything. Your job, your marriage, your privacy. And yet, I smiled faintly. I can finally breathe. A letter arrived a week later, no return address. Inside, a single line. He'd be proud of you. No signature, but I knew who it was from. Ethan's sister, the one who'd cut all ties after his death, the one who'd always believed I was the problem. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat. Closure? Nolan asked. Something close. 6 months later, I returned to the lake. The Lawson estate had been sold, renovated into a rehabilitation center for displaced employees. On the main wall hung a quote, "Integrity doesn't survive in comfort. It survives in fire." Beneath it, a small brass plaque read, "Dedicated to the whistleblowers who risked everything for the truth." I stood there for a long moment, letting the quiet wrap around me. "You did it," Nolan said beside me. "No," I said, turning toward him. "We did." My story began in betrayal. It ended in rebirth. I wasn't just someone's wife, someone's employee, someone's scapegoat. I was Emma Grant, the woman who survived the fire. "If you're watching this," she says directly to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, "remember, truth doesn't destroy. It purifies. Don't be afraid to lose what wasn't real to begin with." This is Emma, signing off. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and drop a in the comments if you believe in standing for truth, even when it costs everything.